Leer. Wildside.
When I was playing with the concept of launching this podcast, and I'm not talking about just this podcast, but the whole concept of Chip Leer's Wildside podcast, today's guest epitomized exactly what I had in mind when I've been thinking about this, because there's so much overlap between sports, passions, especially life sports. And our guest today is a brother and sister who have earned themselves individual places in dramatically different life sports at the highest level that they pursue. And the coolest part about this is they are on the front ends of their journey. They're both incredibly young, but their career trajectory is still headed north at an incredible rate. And of course, what I'm talking about is a brother and sister, Jeff and Kate Gustafson from Kenora, Ontario. Jeff, Gussy, Gustafson, if you're in the bass fishing world, you're in the fishing world at all, you know who Gussy is, because this kid literally tore it up in the local and regional bass tournament circuits across the Midwest and Northwest Ontario growing up. Earned himself a spot on the national tours and has found himself now competing as a regular pro on the BassMaster Elite Series, and he is fresh off the Super Bowl of fishing, the BassMaster Classic. So we have him sitting down with his sister, Kate Gustafson. And Kate is a remarkable human being. This woman started out as a figure skater, switched sports into hockey, found herself a captain of a Division I hockey team, all the way to the elite level of hockey. When her hockey career ends, what does she decide to do? She wants to decide to be a runner, but not just any kind of a runner. She jumps into marathons and takes it with storm, eventually finding herself the fastest Canadian woman runner at the Boston Marathon. She has spent time at the Everest base camp. She spent weeks in Kenya training and studying under some of the best distance athletes in the world. She has found herself now as a running coach for the Brooklyn Running Club and through Mile to Marathon. She is an incredible human being that has great insight. And today with Jeff and Kate, we're going to talk mentorship, athletic idols, parents, motivation, and believing in what's possible in life. It is a fabulous conversation that we sit down with these two here today. So before we do that, I want to remind you that when the show is over, don't hesitate to go to chipleer.com, look this podcast up, because we've got a whole list of show notes listed underneath their podcast that'll take you direct links to Jeff and Kate's social medias and lots of direct information of the things that we talk about here today. It's a really insightful conversation. Be sure that you take some time after the event to like it on whatever platform this is being consumed on. Share it with your friends, tell everybody, and of course, hit the rating button, because that certainly helps us grow this podcast and we can share it with that many more people. So thanks for joining us. Sit back and relax and listen to the incredible stories of a brother and sister from Kenora, Ontario, Jeff and Kate Gustafson. Welcome, Kate Gustafson and Jeff Gussy Gustafson. Welcome to the Wildside podcast. Glad to have you both here today. And I got to tell you how excited I am to do this, because as this whole project has taken shape over the last couple of years, at least in my mind, right? You guys really epitomize what I think about when I think about where my mindset has been in the world of sport and fishing, and all the crossovers that take place there. Because no matter what we pursue in life, there's a lot of commonalities. And I think that you two kind of really epitomize just that. So I'm going to open this thing with a question that has been bothering me forever, which is fishing a sport? Let's ask the runner first. Kate, what do you think?
I mean,
Don't be nice. He's your brother.
I think that I intellectually understand that it can be a sport and that you can make a living doing it. But I think that it's also, for some people, it's like a hobby or, a way for them to connect with nature. It's a way to, yeah, just, like learn about, like, I don't know, like all of these skills that you gain as a fisher person.
Well,
Um,
it's
yeah,
the interesting thing about running and fishing is that they're both, they're life sports, right? They're
yeah,
lifestyle sports, and you can pursue them at whatever level you want to.
Hey,
Is it a
Facebook
sport,
lets
Jack?
me call myself an athlete on my page.
That's
I'm
where
an
I'm
athlete.
going.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm a huge hockey fan too, and Kate actually had a pretty good college hockey career. But I think I never was good enough at hockey or at running to go anywhere doing that. So fishing just kind of was my next thing, and uh, you'll never be as tired ever in your life as if you go to, one of these tournaments that we get 3 days to pre-fish, and we're fishing on the water pretty much from dark to dark. And at the end of those 3 days, you are a tuckered person. I guarantee you.
Well, that's really where I'm looking at a lot of this crossover. When you go to a fishing tournament, for anybody that's listening that doesn't understand that, run us through the pre-fish grind, and then we're going to compare it to a little bit of endurance. What endurance athletes deal with in terms of the grind. And there's all sorts of obstacles that you've got to mentally overcome to get through that.
Sure. So I fish professional bass tournaments, travel all over North America, really. And for the big U.S. tournaments, there's 8 or 9 events over the course of a season, and we get 2.5 to 3 days to practice. And prior to those days, the lakes are off limits for a month or so. So it's a short amount of time to go on what could be a massive body of water that we've never seen before. So we just basically, over those 3 days, want to cover as much ground as possible, figure out how we can catch a few fish, and then hopefully be able to, be competitive in the tournament. But over those 3 days, I mean, you're out in any kind of weather conditions from, below freezing to 100 degrees to everything in between, wind and rain. We're out there no matter, it takes a lot for us to not be on the water. Storms and maybe wind in some places where there's really big water. But I'm on my feet all day, and it's physically demanding in that regard, and then mentally as well.
So how do you deal with the grind of it all? I mean, I fished plenty of tournaments. Not at the level that you do, but I fished enough tournaments, especially multi-day tournaments. And I know that, the physical exhaustion of a full week of dawn to dusk, nutrition plays a factor, physical condition plays a factor, and there's just an overall grind and toll that it takes on your body. And you got to make decisions. And then it comes game day, and you got to be sharp mentally. That's tough.
For sure. So, generally we're not at home for these. So we're on the road, we're traveling. So that adds a little bit of a challenge to everything. I've got 4 or 5 friends that I kind of travel with and roll with, guys that I compete against. And we typically will rent houses wherever we fish. And then we can cook our own food, usually have our own room to stay in, but also have some camaraderie in the evenings, and we can share notes and just, take some of the stress off. Cause we could be away from home for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. And all that stuff just kind of can cause stress or cause you to not perform as well as you want to.
How much effort or thought process do you put into nutrition and food in that process, or is it just all about caffeine?
I'm a coffee guy. I love coffee for sure, but no, I eat pretty good. When I'm at these events, I don't drink any pop or soda. It's all water for me. That's a big one, and just try to cook food at home and not, avoid the restaurant stuff as much as possible. That's it for me. And then as far as boat snacks go, I mean, I try to eat a good breakfast, eat a good dinner. I don't eat a lot during the day usually when I'm fishing, but it's just some different, easy snacks, jerky, nut stuff, and lots of water.
And Kate, you got to see some commonality there, especially endurance running. I mean, nutrition becomes really key if you grind yourself away. And how do you get ready for an event? Now, running's a little bit different because it all kind of leads up to one day. But at the same token, in the new world of endurance running, there's events going for multiple days, for 4, 5, 6 days in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would compare, like, obviously ultra running. I'm not an ultra runner, just to clear that up. The longest distance that I've done is a marathon. But I have done some like longer treks. So, like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, or I've been to Everest Base Camp. And I've done some like through hikes on Canada's West Coast. But those are all a little bit different. You're just kind of, you want to drink a lot of water, eat a lot of like carbohydrates, and it's like energy that you can immediately like convert to energy, right? So and then there's on race day, so if you're like talking about a marathon and performance, you're getting into like the space of taking gels and taking whatever the sports drink is on the course. But that's not just something you do on race day. You have to train your body to digest all of that sugar in your stomach. So it's not actually like an easy thing to do, and it can take years. But I think, fishing is a little bit different because it's, this long day. When I think about going fishing from 6 to 6, that's like, I just think about, I would be so exhausted. So to me, it's like a really remarkable feat of endurance for sure.
Well, there's definitely a grind to it. And I want to come back to, because I've got your Everest Base Camp. I've got some notes and questions about that. And the Kilimanjaro climb had to be pretty impactful. I guess that would be, because I mean, it's emotionally impactful just to get to that feat. But one of the things I want to talk about right now is there's one thing between fishing and running in its community. It's the fellowship that takes place amongst it. And Kate, maybe you can start with this. Is a big part of running is you train. A lot of people train with groups, friends.
Yeah.
But at the same token, when the gun goes off, you're competitors. And you see the same thing going on in the world of fishing, where people will practice for events together, but they compete separately. How does that, first of all, what is that, how does that make up who you are and how you compete?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe there's a little bit of a difference in, often in running, you're trying to beat yourself. Like there is a lot of that, like, my personal best, and I'm trying to be better than I was the last time I did this distance. So that piece of, kind of like your inner drive and what keeps you going. It could be also the reason why you go for a run when it's just crazy weather. So that I think is a little bit different, but I mean, like, can you cultivate competitiveness? Like, I'm a competitive person by nature. Like, I grew up with a family where that was encouraged, and it wasn't, a bad thing to be competitive. Uh, so I think that's, like ingrained in me. It's not something that like I embrace on a daily basis. And like I have to tone it down a little bit. Even like if I'm in a workout with a group of people, and like as a coach, I'm very supportive. So I've gotten into, coaching other runners. So, I think, competitiveness and like supporting your teammates or your peers, like that can be part of it. And I think it's like, go ahead.
Have you ever had like anyone you run against who you like just really want to beat that you don't really like that much?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think everyone has that. And I actually think that it can be kind of unhealthy, where like if you're not even running, like the why of your running or racing or is it's like it's gone so far away from the point. Um, so I think it's just like that requires a higher level of self-awareness and kind of takes the fun out of it when it's like that.
But don't you
Yeah.
think that I know, and just so you're aware of this, I went through your biographies in the introduction to the program, so people do have a little idea of of how you got here. And I know for you, Kate, that your running dramatically changed and your performance dramatically changed by those you surrounded yourself with. And I
Yeah.
think that's important for whatever we're pursuing is to and elaborate on how you got there with that. And I know the same thing for Jeff. He's consistently putting incredibly good anglers around him, which heightens his own abilities.
Yeah, I think there's you know, like if someone were to approach any hobby, and like in my case, like when I graduated university, I was playing hockey, Division 1 hockey, but I'd also played sports my entire childhood. And even in high school, I was surrounded by hockey players who went on to play in the NHL and at other high levels. And so you know what it takes and like the amount of time you need to put into something to be really good at it, to be really great. And I think after like once I started running, you read all the books and like you can only get so far when you're self-taught. So it was really like hiring a coach that was key. So someone who had run at an elite, national level. That was a huge part of it. Running with others, other women who had similar stories, who were just running out of their minds, like these crazy times when you first start, you can't even believe it. Um, and then, yeah, just thinking about like, what are other people doing that I'm not doing? So one of the things was I went to Kenya and I trained at high altitude. And at the time, like that, my marathon time didn't indicate that that was something, um, that a sane person would do, but it was incredible. And actually our younger brother has done the same thing. And then after he came back from Kenya, he ran like crazy times last year. So, yeah, I think it's just like you look around at what other people have done and then try to like think about how you can do the same or
So
more.
yeah, Jeff, how important is you, or it has it been in your career by those that you have put yourself or surrounded yourself with in the world of fishing? I mean, you're traveling right now with and I know that bass fishing is, and if you're not familiar with the fishing scene a little bit, the walleye market, which I'm a big part of in terms of the National Walleye Tour and that end of it, these groups of anglers share a little bit more information than maybe takes place on the bass side. But you travel with each other and learn from each other um, along the trail, and those people you're learning from, it's kind of key, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it goes back to when you and I met probably 2004, 2005. And at that time you were doing your own TV fishing show, and came up here and we fished together. And I'd never, I had very little experience, being in front of a camera fishing. And, so that was a big deal for me. I ended up doing 5 or 6 seasons hosting a show up here in Canada that I did. Guides, I mean, a lot of different guides. When I was in high school and college, growing up, I worked at a number of resorts around Lake of the Woods, and learned a ton from some of these guys that had guided their whole entire lives. And then, as far as the direction I went into tournament fishing, that's sort of my favorite activity and that I have the most passion for. It's just meeting the really successful anglers and sharing notes and comparing notes with them. And now when we travel on the road, I stay with 2 other Canadian guys, Chris and Corey Johnson, and then Seth Fider from Minnesota, Chris Grove from Illinois. And we all fish a little bit differently. We all have techniques that we kind of are really good at and some that we're not so good at. So we don't necessarily share fishing spots. when we're at these events, but we compare notes a little bit and try to help each other, be successful, and it helps out a lot.
Is this where you're kind of learning techniques from each other? So if there's a refinement of a technique, and like I know in the walleye world, it's like this big curtain, right? Nobody wants you to look inside the box and find out what they're fishing with. When I watch the bass tournaments, it's they're holding up to the camera going, "Hey, this is what I'm using today. Good luck," right? And
yeah, kinda. And that's where the difference. I know, like, the walleye guys will share spots a lot more than the bass anglers do, and it's a little bit different culture, I guess. But it's sort of, you might want to try this color lure, or you might want to try fishing a little bit deeper. You might want to try fishing around some docks. It just could be any one thing, and sometimes that'll help you get an extra fish or two maybe, and do something that you're not as comfortable doing, and you might not have wanted to do or thought to try. So
one of the
little tips are good, but
there's a lot of reasons that you two are here today, but you're both competing at and have competed at an incredibly high level in your given professions and sports. And Jeff's coming off his first Bassmaster Classic appearance. Super cool. Congratulations on that, by the way. It doesn't get any bigger than that stage in the terms of bass fishing. Kate, you were the fastest Canadian at the Boston Marathon. We talked about, I did that in the introduction there, and these are amazing feats, which to me, this just doesn't happen, right? And now you're talking about your younger brother, Ben, and his exquisite time running as well. You guys push yourselves. How that has to come from, is it family? Is it how you surround yourself growing up? Tell us. I don't care who wants to chime in here, but because your dad was an athlete, right? I mean, I'm just going to start the place there.
So and I'll let Kate elaborate with him. He's coached Kate and done a lot more of the actual sports stuff with her, but he's probably the most competitive person I've ever met. And I mean, we could go fishing for fun, and it just turns into like, I might be mad at him by the time, like, it could be a Sunday evening at 7:00, we're gonna go fish for an hour, and it's if he gets up 1 or 2 on you, you're gonna know about it. Or like, and our mom's kind of the opposite. She's not like she does stuff to have fun, and it's not always a competition, but like, I don't know how many times at Christmas dinner or whatever, like, we could be playing a friendly, like, board game or card game or trivia game, and like, he'll take it like too far, but it's all good. It's not, it's just, but we come by that competitive part honestly with him for sure.
But he was drafted NHL, correct?
Yep, he was drafted by the St. Louis Blues in 1976. Yeah, and played pro hockey for quite a few years, and was a really good hockey player. And then where we grew up in Kenora, Ontario. Kate lives in New York City now, but I think he coached every level of hockey in Kenora, from the the highest to the lowest, and coached us growing up. But he's a really big sports fan, and is just a competitive person.
Well, maybe he found himself in a different boat because at the tournaments he wanted to take your money, even though Now, he did a lot of coaching with you, Kate. Is that what I understand? Because run me through a little bit of how, because I think you're running to hockey, and how you got to hockey. Was hockey directed by him, or how did you get to that? And where was he coaching you?
So I think there's like a few pieces to this. Is that, like, at the time we were growing up in Kenora, you know, like it was like a time in the world where you have to entertain yourself. So like every moment that you're not at school, you're either like playing outside, and often that's like in some kind of athletic way. So like first, I think my dad, he flooded a rink in our backyard, like one of those stories that's like, okay, you know, kind of sounds almost mythical now, but yeah, he would flood a rink in our backyard, and I was into figure skating at the time. So, you know, just like hours on end out there skating. And then um, I just had this like one day women's hockey became an Olympic sport, and we were on our way to sign up for like the winter sports. And I told my mom, you know, this year I'm going to play hockey. And so then my dad, like, I don't, you know, when you're a kid, you don't know like what conversations your parents are having. And if my dad was like, okay, now I'm going to coach girls hockey, but
Did he treat girls different than boys, or did the brothers and the sisters the same,
no,
or how did that work?
no. So actually, I've done like a lot of like I've thought a lot about this, because it wasn't until actually like I left Kenora and like entered the world, like even like in the business world, that I realized like, oh wait a minute, like men and women are not actually treated the same. Like it was like a big aha moment for me, because I grew up in a house where that was just not the case. You know, like my hockey was just as important as Jeff's or Ben's or Jeff's fishing, or, you know, like if I wanted to get better at hockey, like my dad would, you know, built me like an area to take shots in the summer at our summer camp. And, you know, like he showed me how to lift weights and like things that like didn't matter my gender. It was just, you know, I had an interest in something and a passion. So yeah, he like made the space for that to be possible.
So how do you do coaching? How do you do, there's some competitiveness there that they're teaching you, right? But you got to be supportive as well. I'm guessing there was a lot of support for whatever you were pursuing growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like the caveat there is that like you're gonna get all the support you should get, but you have to like care, you know? So like my parents weren't going to like get up at 5:30 in the morning to drive us to practice if we were, you know, lazy or didn't give our best effort. And I think that that's like something that we learned. Um, you know, like my dad doesn't really have any time for like people who just go through the motions, you know, like, and he doesn't mince words or anything. Like you're gonna hear about it. So I think there's valuable lessons.
I would add that like never once did I ever see him like yell at a ref or like really you know like I know some of my friends now that are coaching hockey, like people my age. They've a few of them have quit because some of the parents are so like out of control with their opinions. And he never would like, you know, tell another coach what to do, or if he wasn't, you know, if it was one of our coaches or anything, he was always like pretty respectful like that, which I think is kind of maybe getting lost a little bit today.
Well, encouragement is encouragement, and here, and where I'm kind of going with this is that, I mean, between your brother Ben and the two of you, there was somehow they instilled that you can do this, right? I mean, you would not have found yourself here if you didn't have a strong belief in yourself and your abilities to accomplish it. And I'm trying to understand how you got to that inner drive and grit, because it's more than a gene pool.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's obviously, like in my case now with running, like, and like Ben is, you know, like we're probably the fastest siblings in Canada, which is kind of interesting. So there's like a bit of nature there. My dad was a great athlete, but there's a lot of nurture that's happening there. And then like if you're lucky enough as a kid to find something that you're passionate about, you know, like maybe there could have been a chance that like none of us were exposed to something that we really, really got super interested in. And I think, at a lot of levels, like we're seeing this, there's like a notable a women's college basketball player that everyone's talking about right now. And she, like, her parents, like, they were new Americans, and they didn't even understand basketball, but they just like supported her, and she's become like the greatest player the NCAA has ever seen. But she had this like wonderful environment, to like to become that and like be super driven. But she was supported, and I think that's what I feel too. Yeah.
But you also have to see it for real. And the thing that I think is really interesting about Kenora is what's the population of Kenora? It's not very big.
Like 14,000.
It's 14,000 people, but there's
And an hour to the next town.
what?
And then an hour to the next community, kind of. It's not like a suburb of anywhere. It's big enough. We've got everything that we kind of need, but it's a small town.
But when you go there, it's amazing because there's incredible humans there. I mean, you've got, and you brought this up earlier. There's people that have gone on to play in the NHL. I think Michael Smith, the Olympian, was from there. You've a couple doors down from you. You ended up in this small little town. You end up with one of the most prolific outdoor writers in North America, Gord Pizer, who's connected to In Fisherman. So you've got a connection there. So we've got athletic connections. You've got players, people that have gone on to grow up and go to the Olympics. So, and in a small town like that, it becomes real, that it's doable. Did that impact you at all?
Yeah, I mean, Michael Smith was a huge influence, I think. Like one of the first people. He went to our elementary school. They had a Michael Smith award that you could earn. I don't even remember like how you earn it, but I just remember like I want to win that Michael Smith award.
That doesn't say competitive at all.
Yeah, and like I think it was for like community leadership and athletic, dedication or something like that was very wholesome. But yeah, his parents came and like I did win, and his parents came and awarded it. So he was definitely someone who I knew about. It was so exciting to watch him. He was Canada's flag bearer in Barcelona. So yeah, and in a sport that's just to think about like the decathlon, like he was an incredible athlete.
So, and you went there. How do you end up going and playing from Kenora hockey to D1 women's hockey in the emergence of the sport? Really, I mean, that's when it was all really becoming becoming an Olympic sport, which really put it on the map in my mind.
Yeah, it became an Olympic sport for Nagano, the Nagano Games. And I can remember watching that and just like, your mind just like expands. And then realizing at some point along the way, like maybe it was even when they're showing the athletes' bios that you can go to school, play a sport. And it didn't even occur to me like, yeah, you can go to a Canadian university and do this. I was just like, I had this idea in my head that no, I'm going to go to an American college. So we bought, like one of those old, I don't know, it was like a book that you could get with all of the American schools listed in it. And then I researched every single school that had a hockey program. And I had an assistant coach of my high school hockey team who worked at the local TV station. So she knew how to operate like, video at the time. And I sent a letter and a video to every single NCAA hockey program in the country. And then I wrote my ACTs and I started to hear back from schools. And then I ended up going so our friend Mike Richards, who had a lot of success playing at these big tournaments called the Prospects tournaments in Toronto. And he was like, the person who told me like, actually they have a women's tournament. So I played there. My parents flew me to Toronto. And I ended up, I don't know, like I played like pretty well. And decided to go to Union College. I didn't visit the school or anything like that, but yeah, and then Union was D3 and they moved D1. So we played in like the Ivy League, and we lost a lot because you play against Harvard or Dartmouth and they have a full lineup of Olympians. So you're not only are you
Damn
playing,
Ivy League schools.
yeah, yeah, and like not only these girls, like women, incredible athletes, but they're so smart. So that's another area of like the sport that's really interesting as well. But yeah, so that's how I ended up there, and it was like not like nothing about that story is like someone saw me play somewhere and knocked on my door and then I got a free ride. It was like not that way at all.
You were driven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, you get it out there and you get it done. Jeff, you were ahead. They didn't have college fishing back then.
No, and I mean, I am jealous now of how awesome it is for all the kids now with, and we see it on these pro circuits. There's young guys coming right out of college and they're like instantly competitive fishing at the highest level, and they've been all over the country and have a lot of experience. And with the internet today, I mean, you can learn so much and be kind of ready for any situation. But no, for me, it was just, I was lucky, and part of it was growing up here at Lake of the Woods in Kenora. A lot of people have come, a lot of prominent anglers have come fishing here, and I got to meet a lot of them and have had, like so much help along the way, and good influence and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I've just kind of, I went to university kind of on the Keep Mom Happy program, and I was a substitute teacher for a couple of years. But other than that, I mean, I have just made my living within the fishing community, guiding fishing tournaments, doing some promoting, outdoor writing, photography, speaking, and just sort of stay busy, piling all that stuff together.
So when we talk about the fishing versus running and life sports, there's different sides of them, right? People can participate these at whatever level they want. So as a tournament angler, I know guys that are tournament anglers that they can't play fish for it means nothing to them, right? If they're not competing, they're not fishing. Can you play fish? Or is it only about tournaments?
No, I am opposite. A lot of my pals are just bass. But no, I do. If something's pulling on the end of my line, I'm into that. I do a lot of ice fishing and walleye fishing, muskie, crappies, saltwater, whatever I can go do, I do it and have fun. The bass tournament stuff is like my biggest passion. That's what I really enjoy the most. But I just love it. Part of it for me is just being outdoors and I've never like really played a video game in my life. I just kind of, and it's a function again of growing up in a small town and in remote, sort of semi-remote part of Canada where we're set up to be outdoors pretty easy.
So how, knowing the way that Lake of the Woods makes it up in the waters that are close to your home, they're they've got a lot of, they've got weed lines, they've got, there's fishing scenarios there that aren't accustomed to in the southern US, right? So you get down there, you got a lot of lessons to learn. How do you practice if you need to get better on hills, run hills, right? So how do you get better at fishing in places that you don't live? How do you train to compete?
I think for me, when I started to go down south, 2012, 13, I got my butt whipped, a few times, and you learn from that. But I think what sort of saves me a little bit is just all the multi-species fishing that I do, and just, a lot of time out on the water, and that all that experience just sort of helps you to use your electronics, use your senses with the weather and the conditions, and just sort of, But at the end of the day, fishing is there is a luck factor for sure, but it's just using a lot of your experience to make a plan and hopefully, but you have tough days, I don't care who you are, for sure,
So
sometimes don't bite.
if there's a new technique emerging, whatever it happens to be, Ned rig, whatever is latest and greatest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you ever just put the blinders on and say, you know what, I'm going out today and I'm going to learn how to rig this, fish this, retrieve this, play with cadence, play with weight, play with plastics, play with trailers, and just learn it from from top to bottom, and just completely engulf yourself regardless of how you do, or how do you do that?
Yeah, and that's just the function of having time. But you almost, a new technique, and they do come around in new types of lures all the time, and to be successful at a high level, you've got to be very versatile. And for me, you almost got to take everything out of the boat that works, that you have a lot of confidence in, and go, learn how to do the new thing. But yeah, I will do that for sure sometimes. And like up where I live, we have really good bass fishing, but they don't get really big, just a function of their growing season and everything, but really good fishing. But down south where we fish, sometimes, the bass get really big, and some of the people use like gigantic lures, which you wouldn't be able to really use up here, but we can go throw those lures and catch pike and muskie. So that, I'll do that and just learn how to make them work properly, the lures work properly, and that's, I've benefited from that before, when I go down to Texas or Florida and fish for some of these bigger bass.
So when you won your first Kenora Bass International, what were you? Was it your 14 or 15?
I got second when I was 16, and then won when we were 17. So not that young, pretty young.
Well, by just so you know, the further you climb in the sport, the younger you will become at that first KBI, right? It's just gonna
yeah.
You'll be 9 by the time you won it at 9 years old. But with that, there was some pretty interesting stuff going on. You kind of touched on that a little while ago, and we're talking a little bit about mentors and shrinking your world and having world-class athletes in Kenora. In the fishing world, you had the Hibdons coming to town to fish this tournament. You have Bob Azumi coming to town to fish this tournament. We had the Linders coming to town. So, you were exposed to iconic names and people in an industry right out your back door. And by the way, you beat a lot of them.
And that had a massive influence on me, just, getting to meet all those people that I really looked up to at a young age. And, most of those guys all kind of like did it right. And that rubbed off on me, I think, and it's helped me tremendously. But that was a huge deal. If that tournament wasn't going on and those, all those people weren't there, it would have, I don't know what I would have ended up, where my life would have took me. But no, that's I've been really blessed in that regard, for sure.
So then fast forward, you end up down, you finally decide to make the jump, and you get a great boost from our friends at Kruger Farms, and they're going to pay all your entries, and you get down to your first big FLW event. You push away from the dock. Who's your boat bumping up against, and what the heck is going through your mind?
Yeah, no, the first tournament I ever fished, like pro tournament I ever fished, was down at Lake Okeechobee in Florida. So that's, in my world, in bass fishing, that's one of the most historic bodies of water in the world. And I showed up down there, didn't know anybody, didn't really.
You did well.
And I did really, I did. I watched a few of the old TV shows from past tournaments that they'd had there, but yeah, my dad came with me, and those FLW events, he was actually allowed to practice with me. So that was, and he'd always come to a few events every year. But we went down there, and I think there was maybe 175 anglers in the field. So everyone fished 2 days, and then the top 20 got to fish the third day, and the top 10 would fish day 4. So I made it to the third day. I made the top 20, and figured, oh, this is an easy way to make a living and make money. And I think I won like $12,000. So at the time, it was, that was one of the biggest checks that I'd ever got handed. Got to go to Florida for a week in January from Canada. Paid 12 grand, and
what's not to like about this?
Caught a bunch of big bass, but as I went on, fishing is what I'm doing is kind of gambling in a sense. So, but I'm really dedicated to it, and over the last several years, my results have gotten a little more consistent, and I'm having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing. But yeah, just that first tournament, launched the boat next to like Larry Nixon. He was one of the greatest of all time, and just it was pretty cool. Like, he gave me the wave, how's it going. One of the other first tournaments I fished, Rick Clunn was in it, who's probably like arguably the greatest of all time too. He drove up to me, and I've always run a Lund aluminum boat, and most of the anglers are running fiberglass, more traditional bass style boats. And I remember Rick Clunn came up to me, and it's like that first year, it was just like a wow every time one of these like great anglers was coming and that I got to talk to or make eye contact with or whatever. But Rick Clunn came up to me and said, "Hey man, I really like your boat. I think it's great that you're down here doing this, and good luck." And I just thought that was so cool, and it was it was pretty neat.
That's so. But the game, to stay in there in tournament fishing, when you have it's a grind, and all these national events like this, they're multiple day events. There's an ebb and flow to the bite and your thought process that goes through it. We talked about training for these a little while ago, and how mentally exhausting it can be to get through these. What goes through your mind? Like, if you're running, and I love to run and I love to fish, and if I'm in an endurance event or any kind of a longer run, sometimes, it literally comes down to 10 more steps, 10 more steps, 10 more steps. What is going through your mind when there's a clock, the clock's running out, you need a bite? Is there a training for that? Did you go through that, like when you're practicing for tournaments? Is there any mental preparedness that way? Or is this is grit that you got from your dad playing hockey in the backyard?
So just for everyone that maybe isn't familiar with these fishing tournaments, most of them are multi-day events, and most of the time we want to bring in the 5 largest bass that we can, and we keep them alive in a live well on our boat. They weigh them and then let them go. So usually we'll have an 8-hour day, and like often we go to really good fisheries, and it's easy to catch 5 fish, and you just want to figure out how to catch big ones. But sometimes it's what you think would be really easy to catch 5 bass, it doesn't work out that way. And I've had so many times where I've been like ounces from winning $10,000, and I got nothing, like one more bite, and I've also caught the other end of that too, where I've been an ounce ahead of somebody else, and made it on the next day, or there's just a lot of those variables and things. But no, that last hour, if you need that one more fish, and usually if you're close, or it's not very fun. But it's just turn on the go and try to hunt it down. But
do you have any process that you go through to try to keep your thought process clear? Because one of the reasons, I fish tournaments, and it obviously isn't for me. If you looked at my results, I'm much better just writing a check, sending it in the mail, and saying, see you later. I'm not. I'm not, and I bring this up because of the one thing we see on the tour is everybody thinks, the people that think they can fish, and then there's people who can fish under pressure. And it's the pressure part of tournament fishing that changes the entire game, which has nothing to do with your ability. It has everything to do with your thought process in your head and how you can separate what's going on right now, conditions, everything that's on the water in front of you, the wind direction, the bite, the way that the front is moving, how it's all changing, and going, you know what? I know I love this spot, but I'm telling you, and I know that the fish are over here, and if I switch techniques on another spot, I may just get the winning catch. And then you get it, you go back in, you hold up a big fish, and everybody thinks you just,
it's so easy. And yeah.
Aw, shucks, I threw it over here in the grass and got a bite.
Yeah. Right. And at the level I'm doing it at, I mean, everyone has the fundamentals. They can cast and have good equipment and have, a lot of experience. But then there's the handful of anglers that are like just consistently win and are the best, and I think that's the case in any sport, any activity.
So the top of the leaderboard, is the top of the leaderboard always the ones that handle the mental stress the best? And then everybody in the league field is a damn good fisherman?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part of it. And, I don't get too worked up. I mean, I think I did more when I was younger, but I mean, if I lose a fish or I might show emotion for 30 seconds on that, but I don't, well, it's gone. You got to, find another one. But, for me, it's just use all that experience, and like you say, it's making a good decision based on the weather, based on the conditions, based on where other people might be fishing. I mean, we go to some of these places in the South that are really popular. If you get a nice weekend, nice weather, like there's going to be boats on some of these bodies of water that I've never could imagine, like from where I'm from. So you might not get to fish all the places that you want to. And there's a lot of variables that are out of your control, but I think it's just trying to control everything that you can, make sure your equipment's in good condition and working properly. And, just have confidence. And I just try to always have fun. That's a big part of it for me. Like if I had to go do this and wasn't able to hang out with my little crew of buddies on the road and compare notes and get to talk to them, and it would take a lot of the fun out of it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm trying to come up with the right words to be able to ask the question, but the top of the field and the thought process that goes behind making those decisions. Is there something here's the best way I think I can phrase this. If you were to look at your younger self or anybody that maybe, we talked about people that you looked up to when they started coming to your town and fishing. If you're looking at a younger angler, what are the lessons, or is there any one thing that you could tell them to do? Because what I see on the tour is on the walleye tour, at least, is I see young, up and coming, very incredibly talented anglers, and some of them aren't very patient. I mean, they put so much weight on themselves. Now, maybe it's the fact that it's walleye and we only have 4 events a year, right? So everyone carries a little bit more weight. So every decision is that much bigger. Every ounce counts that much more. But they put an incredible amount of weight on getting a particular result early in a career, thinking that the result is going to change who they are. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you would look back and say to yourself, or to tell anybody about how to go about every tournament?
Well, the biggest thing for me, and I get asked this all the time via social media and just, the one thing I get asked all the time is, how do you make a living fishing, or how are you able to compete in these, make it to the BassMaster Elite Series? And the biggest thing I tell people, and what's benefited me, is just being on the water a lot, just fish a lot. And now today, like, social media is such a big, I'm a regular guy, the sponsorship and help is a big deal for me. And all these sponsors want you, doing work for them on social media. And some people are really good at making videos and creating a social media following. But at the end of the day, in the tournament world and guiding, I mean, you have to catch fish. That's at the end of the day, if you want to make it. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just a lot of time. I fish a lot and just spend a lot of time on the water, and that's just going to, help you down the road and making good decisions and making good calls. And that's a big part of it. Being confident.
So confidence is everything. And Kate, how did you make the transition? You go from D1 hockey, which is very competitive hockey, and then suddenly you find yourself back to running. Now, just the truth, you have your day job, right? You're a copywriter. Is that what I understand?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, and then how I'm really interested from an athletic standpoint, how you transition from hockey to running.
Yeah, I mean, I think like running is very much a lifestyle. So yes, adults, like you can find like people meet it, later in life in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. And we see
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
For us 50-ishes.
Yeah, 50-ishes. There, maybe when you start doing a 5K or whatever. Or it might be something like I always say, like we were all once a runner. So we all ran when we were kids. And, sometimes people take this long way around to then do it again as adults. And if your body allows you to do it, sometimes like a big life event will happen and, people have to they start running or whatever to work through some, they want like the mental benefits of it. Like mental health benefits, which are like also really, really strong. But yeah, no, I was missing, like that purpose in my life from hockey and organized sport. And so I signed up for a marathon, and then, just took a deep dive into like reading every book I could about it. Then I realized, there's this Boston Marathon. So then I ran that in 2009. And then
But you had to qualify for that.
I had to qualify for that.
So you just out of the blue, I'm going to run, and then I'm just going to, why run a 5K when I can run 26.2?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So qualified for Boston, ran Boston. There's my.
Exactly.
So this is actually the second time I ran Boston, and that's when I won the women's open field. So my brother Ben and I both ran this race that year. These are my old teammates that are with the signs.
Yeah.
There's Ben in the picture.
Very good.
So there's obviously there's the elite women's field. They go off half an hour before the mass start. And then the rest of us, so I guess like 25,000 other people. And so I was the first woman out of all of those people, and I finished 25th overall. And that's kind of like around the point where running was really changing for me, and I was starting to get faster and better. And I've worked with a number of different coaches. And then over the last few years, I've worked with a coach, and he ran in the Olympics, at the London Olympics, in the marathon. And he's just had a huge influence on me. And I've done workouts that I never thought I could. And, and then during this whole time, I started coaching as well. So that's sort of my in air quotes side hustle. And I've coached hundreds of athletes to, qualify for Boston. I've coached women to run a 242. So really high caliber athletes as well. Business executives, new moms, everybody.
You're coaching in two places. Is that right? There's the Brooklyn Track Club.
Yeah.
Is that right? And then and then there's M to M. Is that right?
Yeah, Mile to Marathon. So that's it's a community again. So this is the Brooklyn Track Club, and I actually coach their women's performance team. So I work with, there's about 35 women. A lot of them are just recent graduates. And yeah, we had a Zoom call on Tuesday night and had everyone get together talking about their goals. And yeah, it's a really great way to give back and share my expertise. I learn from my athletes too, so I bring that into my own life. And yeah.
What do you think you learn from your athletes the most? Or
Uh,
is there one thing that, I mean, is there anything that sticks out? Like, I mean, there's got to be some little lessons there dealing
I mean,
with.
actually, there's something you said earlier where you've noticed in fishing where people, if they're like, younger age and they expect these results and they expect success right away. So often as a coach, I would say that I learn a lot that people can really get attached to, like they tie their identity to the outcome of a
Yeah.
race.
Yes.
And like, I think it's really important to say like, yes, I'm a runner, coach, a writer, a sister, whatever, but like running it's something I do. It's not necessarily like exactly who I am. And I think like, I am not like just a 240 marathoner, like I'm so many more things than that. And you can't tie your identity to, winning Bassmaster, for example. Like you have to have other things going on and kind of like look at your life and prioritize like what is actually like, if you lost everything, who would you be and what would matter?
Balance is important. There's a lot to that. I know that I personally I spent a lot of time younger just fully engulfed in one thing. That's one of the reasons that I've relaunched Wildside the way I have, is because my life is much more diverse than the way I portrayed it. And I
Yeah.
wanted to investigate that and share that with people, because there's a lot of really cool things going on, especially in life sports, and running is definitely one of those. Coaching, I've got a running coach and I adore my running coach. She kicks me in, it's a female.
Yeah.
And she kicks me in the butt when I need to get kicked. And but she also is encouraging. I'd like her to be more encouraging. She does more boot kicking, I think. But I also know that I need her because I've got personal goals that I want to accomplish in my running, and it's been a really interesting process getting to know somebody and expose my physical weaknesses and have them work with them and have improvement. That's why I was talking to Jeff about what do you focus on in terms of fishing, because if I'm trying to improve my VO2 max. I like running at altitude. I like mountain events, and I live in the Midwest at 1,200 feet. Okay, so I've got to, and there's specific training that you got to do to get yourself ready, and that's pretty. So, do you think coaching, Jeff? Do you think coaching would work in fishing? Could you have fishing coaches, or is it just simply mentorship?
I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think at like the elite level, you're sort of, everybody's probably a little more like hard-headed. It would be hard to like I really like to get the 2 cents from my buddy Seth Feider, who I was one of my like best buddies on the road, and if he tells me something, I absolutely absorb what he tells me. But I don't know. That's a good question. I think for people that are like want to get into fishing more, hiring a guide or going fishing with a guide is a great thing, because you can just sort of watch and learn how they might attack a species of fish or a body of water, and just learn like boat etiquette and how to do things kind of right when you're on the water. But absolutely. I mean, I guess I never really thought about it, but yeah, I could use a coach for some things for sure.
Well, I think that certainly there's a business model there, because I mean, I can think of a lot of times on the water. Granted, we've got Google, right? So anytime we have a fishing question, you can Google a video to see how a technique works. Yeah. But at the same token, having somebody talk you through it can be advantageous as well. But for Cape, when I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to add, just a lot of simple things like tying a knot, would be, it's hard to learn how to do that from watching a video.
Yeah.
For some of the good ones, if you had somebody that really was in person to teach you how to do it. Yeah, there's a lot of things for sure.
Well, there's multiple, it's knowing how to react to it. I mean, that's why we train. And when you go on long runs, I mean, you do that in all sorts of different types of weather, because you never really know what race day or run day, event day is going to be like. So you have to get outside and you have to endure that. But when you get back into running after hockey, Kate, how do you end up going? First of all, tell me, what is Everest Base Camp? Or you did a trek in Nepal, right? And then there was just some plain Kenya trip. There's two parts of the world there that you're doing high altitude training, and then
I think like traveling is like part of what was interesting growing up in Northern Ontario is that I never really went anywhere. Like I don't like until I was like I went down to Southern Ontario, maybe parts of the Midwest in the U.S. But I read a lot. Like we all three of us read a lot of books. So I wanted to see the world. And I mean, I've been to 6 continents and 35 countries, and I have seen a lot of it now. And like, I still want to see everything. But that's probably been like, this pull. And even like as an adult, I've moved, to different cities. And when I went to Nepal, I just turned 25. Everest Base Camp Trek, if people are familiar with it, you fly from Kathmandu to this tiny little town with like one of the most dangerous airports in the world. The little town's called Lukla, and you land uphill in the mountains in the Himalaya, and you get out and you're matched with a guide, and you walk 12 hours a day. Every 2 days you take a day to acclimatize, so it takes about 11 days to get up to base camp. And that's like at base camp, is if you are a mountaineer, that's where you will spend about a month acclimatizing if you're actually going to summit the mountain. So I mean, it's just a really incredibly beautiful part of the world.
And what was it? The purpose was just to see the world, or are you training for?
Yeah, no, that was just. I mean, like obviously, there's a physical feat that is part of that I think is more appealing. But but I think there's something.
That is really cool.
It is. It's just remarkable and so beautiful. And like, I mean, I grew up in a beautiful place, and I love being outside. But I think there's something about like remote places in the world that if you have an opportunity and like it's a great privilege to travel. Like I certainly recognize that. But yeah, going to Nepal was incredible. And then later when I went to Kenya, that was very much focused on running. So there's a famous town in Kenya called Iten, and it's at about 10,000 feet. And you stay at a camp, and all your meals are made. And it's very, very like humble and pretty basic, but it was really an incredible experience. And I went in 2015. My brother Ben went last year. And basically like what you do there is you run. And there's this famous dirt track, and the Kenyans, they just like have this ingrained belief like running is a way out for them. And obviously they've had tremendous success. So it was pretty cool to see how like, even like to Jeff's point, like when you learn from the best, like that was probably, a way to like see how, the best in the world are actually like living and training. Yeah.
So and then you end up going and climbing Kilimanjaro on top of this. So what I'm gathering from this is that you you see something. No, it's really admirable. And each one of these little decisions that you make, like, you know what, I want to go to base camp. You know what, I want to go to Kenya and train with these other athletes. They're little achievable goals, but the overall outcome, you find yourself when you cross a finish line, the top Canadian runner, or at Boston, right? I mean, these are things, all these little decisions through life end up leading to one successful point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think there's something also, I mean, like with Jeff with Bassmaster this year, like we all went down and we got to see him, and that's like that's not where the story ends. You know, like my story doesn't end like at that start or finish line in Boston. It's like it's all part of like this, you know, long story that's like hopefully we're just like a quarter way through and it's gonna get better. But you know, like that's what I'm also interested in. Like what kind of like new experiences can you create for yourself? And you know, there's a lot of things that like people just say like, oh, I wish I could do that, or I'd love to do that, or but you know, I can't. Or you know, like I think there's a lot as a coach, or you know, even just like as myself as an athlete, like there's always going to be reasons why you shouldn't do something or why you should quit, or you know, but like that the point is like I guess in like sharing these stories is that like it took me 10 years between like running Boston the first time as like a, you know, an everybody kind of runner, and then 10 years later I was with the elite women, you know, the fastest women on the planet, and in the biggest race in the sport. So, you know, outside of the Olympic Games.
And do you think, I mean, I think that's, I mean, the one thing I've learned from my coach, my running coach, is because last year I ran my first ultra, right? That was a big deal for me. But I never, the first time, well, the first ultra I ever end up with, and I'm getting off subject here, but literally the first ultra I ever end up with, and I go to, is I'm standing at the starting line, and Killian is in the front row, right? And if you don't know trail running, you don't know who Killian is, but this man is unbelievable. I had no idea who this guy was, but I did know that what he was pulling off, I literally believed was unachievable for me.
Yeah.
And to run that same course a few years later and accomplish it, and granted I didn't win, I don't expect to win, but I'm running against me. Every goal is achievable if you break it down into small enough pieces. And that's one thing that my coaches really helped me with.
Yeah. It's funny, Killian's April Fool's joke was he was retiring from running, like the best.
That was a great Solomon
ice fishing pro.
That was in, I don't know if you can, we've got Chad, the producer. I don't know if you can look up Killian Jornay's Instagram page. It's a Solomon video.
Yeah. So great.
That was a fabulous April Fool's.
Yeah, I was like, wow, it makes ice fishing look so incredible.
Well, until you watch them,
scared he wanted into fishing, so I was like, you know, I don't want to deal with this guy, you know.
Did you see it? Because he's awkwardly holding this fishing pole.
Our brother Ben actually shared it with us. That's the first time Kate had maybe seen it earlier. But Ben showed it to me, and
Ben is a big fan of his.
Well, yeah, there's Killian right there. Do you want to watch it? Can we watch it?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know if we got audio here.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just so strange because it's like, you know, just even like him walking is not like what you usually see.
It's the fun part about the sport, and breaking things down. I think both of you have done just that throughout your career to accomplish your goals. You're breaking out into bite-sized pieces that makes the darn near anything achievable. Kate, I want to know how you set a Guinness World Record for distance for a group of women. Tell me about this. That I just found this online this morning before we met.
Yeah, we were raising money for, I think, a local YMCA in Toronto, and a group of women in Australia had done it. So we set the world record for distance run on a treadmill over 12 hours by 12 women, like just, you know, very random and, you know, this arbitrary time. But so yeah, there were a number of like incredibly fast women in Toronto who were up to do it. We I think we had like 3 lawyers on site the whole day because it has to be verified and, you know, no one can cheat. And
And
like,
lawyers don't trust lawyers, so we
yeah,
need 3.
3 of them. It was really strange. We had like all of these meetings leading up to it of how we would do it. Even the transition from like one woman on the treadmill, like going full speed, to the next woman coming on to the treadmill. Um, so I think like, yeah, we passed the distance we needed in like the second to last woman. So that was kind of a neat experience, and we
What
raised
was
a lot of money.
how fast were you running? What was the distance, and where did you fall inside that 12? Where did you
I actually was last, I believe. Um, but yeah, I think we were running in like mile pace, probably around like, I don't know, 550 mile for about an hour. So pretty quick.
Yeah, that's flying right along, especially on a treadmill. Treadmill
Yeah,
running
it was
so
it
hard.
was not comfortable. They
No.
had fans everywhere.
I would have a hard time doing 6 for a minute. So that's pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And you haven't picked up you I know that you did run a little bit for a while, but you have not picked that up. Well, there we go. There's the treadmill Guinness World Record broken in Toronto.
Yeah.
Impressive group. Do you still keep in contact with those women?
Yeah, a few of them. Yeah, the one in the middle with the Adidas jacket, she's probably my best friend. She's been up to Soon Arrows as well. Her name is Katie. Yeah.
Very nice. Do you how active are you, Jeff?
uh, I don't do very good on the regimented. I kind of come and go with it. But I'm active. Like we live, my wife Shelby and I live out about 10 miles west of Kenora. So I've been like putting in lots of time the last couple of weeks, just sort of clearing brush and chopping wood, and then we have a pretty big yard with these great big white pines. So it's like a week-long raking project. So I like stay pretty active, doing stuff. But the you know the regimented scheduled workouts, I probably wouldn't impress you guys very much with that.
Well, but it's all about, oh, there we go. But yeah, you are getting out and doing some shed hunting, it looks like.
Yeah, that was yesterday. So that the shed hunting, looking for deer antlers, that's a good workout, and we get to see some spectacular scenery, and there's a little waterfall in behind us. But yeah, that was yesterday afternoon.
Aw.
Very
We
cool. At
went
least
for a
you're getting
little.
out, you're getting outside and enjoying it. And that's where, I mean, that's why one of the reasons we're doing this, it's our first doing this online like this, because of the fact that we're all dealing with COVID and sheltering at home or staying at home. And it's been a challenge. We don't know what the rest of the season is going to look like. We have no idea when we're going to get back to it, or fishing or life or anything at this point. But when this is being recorded,
Yeah.
so it's really it's really been difficult. So what I mean, you're basically, just to touch on this before we close out here, Jeff, you're hanging out waiting for decisions. What are your sponsors telling you what to do, and how are you spending your time besides shed hunting?
So yeah, I've been home for about a month now, so I've been doing some ice fishing, and my main income is competing in these high level bass tournaments. So that's on hold obviously right now, and we just don't know, when that's going to get going again. We got an email yesterday with some later season fall dates for some tournaments that have been canceled, and just sort of hopeful that we'll be able to do that. But yeah, in the meantime, feel pretty lucky where I live right now with everything that's going on. I mean, Shelby went into town today, but otherwise neither of us have been into town in like 10 days. And we just, I can leave from my house on ATV and go ice fishing or shed hunting. And it's easy for us to at least be outdoors. So that's making things a little bit easier. But as far as sponsors go, it's some of them are on the keep pumping out content. People are watching it. They want to see stuff, and then some of them don't want us tagging them in anything that we're doing right now. They're on the stay home. so it's a little bit challenging because you don't, it seems like with fishing in certain areas, it's turned into a big fight with whether you should be able to go or not. And, so it's hard to have an opinion on it really. Cause I want to get this done and over with as soon as possible. But at the same time, where I live, I can go fishing in a pretty safe manner. And I'm lucky in that regard, but I don't know.
And when it comes to the coronavirus, you're both basically on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And Kate, you're in the epicenter. You're in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn. It's like, lots, everyone, you know what to expect when you think of New York City, and it's nothing. It's none of those things right now. It's quiet, and people are avoiding others, and everyone's wearing a mask, and it's just like a heaviness to this city that has like unlimited energy. So that's just really strange, to get your head around, and like you don't want it to be normal. Like it should never feel normal that things are the way they are right now.
Are you leaving much? I mean, when you go outside, I know that, like, for myself, these over the last couple of weeks, I mean, it's like the only time I'm getting out is going to the grocery store. The only time I really see, I two things. I've got a group of runners, and we do run on Saturdays. We do our long runs, but we're literally 20 some feet apart. So we're rationalizing it that's okay. But otherwise I go to the grocery store and you run in, there's these awkward interactions that you have with people.
Yeah.
What's it like to leave your home in Brooklyn?
So I'm still running 6 days a week. I'm running solo. Like, I think as a run leader here, it's like pretty important to like follow the rules. So everyone's running on their own. I wear a bandana. So that's been the new thing, which is, it's fine. Like, I don't think it's worth it doesn't like feel great, or it's not my favorite thing, but you got to do what you got to do and follow the rules. And then, I go to the grocery store about once a week, and that's just like this whole procedure, it like what used to take 30 minutes is now like an hour and a half, like cleaning things and getting in line. And, it's just like you appreciate how easy things used to be.
So are you telling me I'm doing the wrong thing, that I shouldn't be getting together? And I'm asking you a serious question because I mean, it's a small town, 950 people. Most of us are, in fact, all of us I know are doing a really good job of staying at home and only going to the grocery store. So the only time we actually see anybody is once a week. We park at the same parking lot. We all laugh because we park on opposite ends of the parking lot just to be dramatic about the point. And then we take off on a run, but we are doing it quite a ways. I bet you there's no way we get within 12 feet of each other. So that's where we rationalize it.
I don't know. I think there's just so much. There's a lot of debate, like just like Jeff said, like what's safe and what's not. There's been like some interesting studies. They're not peer reviewed, but how long like your breath lingers in the air, and I wear a mask not to protect myself, but to protect others. Like, should I be, a carrier but not know it and show no symptoms? Then like it really could be quite harmful for other people. So I don't know. Like, I think the rule right now is like, I want to be running with my friends, but I can't. And like, so running solo is kind of the way to go. But, I also realize it's different where you live.
The truth is within my running group, I am running alone. They're quite a ways ahead of me. So and I'm okay with that. So whether it's running or fishing, I pretty much am bringing up the back end of the tail end of the crowd anyway. So it's all good. Hey, if you don't mind, Kate, you posted something on your M2M, on that M2M site. Could you read that?
Which one?
You made just a post I found it on Twitter here. This one.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is the Canadian group. So I write obviously a lot and for a living within my job in New York City, but I do write from time to time for Mile to Marathon about running. And so a few weeks ago, this went out in an email to like our hundreds of athletes, and then they posted it here on Instagram and Twitter. So you want me to read it?
Yeah, if you would.
Sure. Being braver than we want to be. This is for you if you feel you can't be any braver. If you feel like you have to be more or run more. If you don't know what more there is to give. If seeking out how to do more for others is the only thing that feels right now. If you went out too hard trying to maintain your routine and now you want to reset. If you need a hug and don't have access to one. If you're struggling through illness or caring for someone who is. If you're worried about losing your job or lost your job or feel guilty for having a job. If you boldly leave your home every day for your job. If you're trying to be a parent, a teacher, a partner, a chef, an athlete, and a friend all at once. If you're running and running and running for a finish line that doesn't exist. If you are setting records on Strava or you are on the watch list bandwagon. If push-ups aren't your thing or you've tagged 70 acquaintances to a push-up challenge. If you're sick of Zoom calls, yet a certain Zoom call is your lifeline to a community you miss. If there's a voice telling you that you need to be better, kinder person after this is over, but what you really need is to be a better and kinder person to yourself in this moment. If answers are all you want and questions are all you find. Take a deep breath. The end of a hard interval kind of breath. The end of a long, difficult day breath. A mid-race, you can do hard things breath. You will get through this. We will get through this. The point of running is not to change who you are. No one runs a marathon to come out a different person. Running teaches us more about who we already are. It's that simple, really. Navigating a crisis is much the same. There's beauty and pain and discomfort. We can't remember a race that didn't present a similar challenge. 1 mile at a time, one day at a time, one brave step at a time.
I love the way that encompasses all these scattered emotions and feelings that we have regarding our situation dealing with this pandemic. And at the same time, I think it's completely interchangeable with fishing. And I loved it. I thought it was really insightful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard because we're all so scattered with all of our emotions over this that we don't know how, because we don't know what's next. And the difficult part for me, at least, is just not seeing or knowing when this is going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you guys are feeling the same thing.
Yeah, I think there's actually something though, like in that is that, you know, like you said, you register for tournaments or, you know, Jeff goes in a tournament or like you go out fishing or I go for a run and like you actually never know, right? Like we really never know. We never know what's going to happen in a tournament or a race. And like that's actually the truth that we always live with. But in this case, it's just like it's a big weighty one. We don't know what's going to happen, but like we actually never did.
There's a lot that's really well said, Kate. It's so poignant for where we're at. And I think the one thing, like for me right now, is I don't know what I can look forward to. I'm holding on because I'm going back to run another 50K at the Rut this year. I'm holding on that Labor Day weekend I'm going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with Jeff and tournaments, and maybe you've got events. I mean, so I have found one thing I've learned about myself through this is that I really need something to aspire to. Running, just going through my daily activity, to go through my daily activity with not building for something or some end all goal, I find empty. And I need that to grasp onto. And that's what and right now that's slippery, right? It's like a greased pig. We don't know what what events we can actually hold on to and think are going to still be there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think though, like, I mean, I don't want to put words in like either of your mouths, but if you couldn't race again, or you couldn't fish in a tournament again, you would still fish and run,
Well,
right?
absolutely. There's no question about it.
Yeah. So
It's just that but it's a different mindset, and we're having to learn that. We're going to come out of this stronger. There's no doubt about it. It'll make us mentally tougher. So there's a lot of lessons in here. We just don't know what they are yet.
yeah,
Or
I
do
agree.
we? Well, I can't wait originally when we started talking about this, I wanted to was going to wait till Kate, till you came home some weekend and I could just run up to Kenora and sit down with you. And I think I've got more notes left here that we're going to have to make sure that we get that done at some time. You guys have been more than generous with your time here today. So I'm really grateful that you jumped on for this podcast. I will have lots of notes in the podcast notes with links to all of Kate's accomplishments and Jeff's accomplishments. We never even touched how 3 siblings and only one ends up getting called Gussy. Okay, we never even got to that. Or maybe you all are. We don't know, but stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and I look forward to a chance to do this again sometime.
Thank you, Chip.
Yeah, likewise, buddy. This has been fun, and stay safe, everybody.
All right. Peace out. Thank you. Thanks for listening to today's podcast with Jeff and Kate Gustafson. What an interesting brother and sister. I'll tell you what, we're going to have to figure out time to get Ben on this podcast as well, because he sounds just as interesting as his brother and sister are. You know what, there's lots of information that comes from each and every podcast. I encourage you to get to chipleer.com, get to that podcast page, and you can find direct links on those show notes from each and every podcast. But before you leave this platform, make sure you hit the subscribe button, give us a rating. We'd love to have that. It's going to help us grow in the future. Thanks for joining us on Chip Leer's Wildside podcast, and we'll see you again soon.
Don't miss a single Wildside podcast. Subscribe to the Chip Leer's Wildside Podcast YouTube channel today, or visit fishingthewildside.net.